Good morning and afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from today. We're excited to have you with us. We are excited to share the PlexTrac Like a Pro webinar series today. As if you are current customers, you already know that we do these every month and kind of highlight all the features that we've packed into PlexTrac in the last month, and we also like to highlight common use cases, ways to get the most value from PlexTrac and truly be able to show off all that you can do within PlexTrac. If you're not a customer or a new prospect, we're really glad that you joined us. And as always, you can find these videos online. You can review our past webinars to see other use cases and features and functionality. You're always free to reach out and request a demo as well if you haven't already. But we are excited to spend a little time kind of showing off what we've got released this month and what we have in store for some of the new features coming down the road. So without further ado, why don't we get started and dive right into PlexTrac Like a Pro. What's the tagline? And with that, I'm going to hand it over to our esteemed Sean Scott, our VP of Success, who's going to run through some of the cool new things that we've got in and show you some good use cases around tags. So, Sean, take it away.
Just heard that I might have an issue with my mic there. Can anybody hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Awesome, great. Sorry about that. I was trying a mic there. Like most of us, I'm working at home, and we had the lawn crew show up outside. So, all right, folks. Well, thanks, Dan, and I apologize for that short delay there. Thanks for joining us. Once again, I'm going to try to be respectful of your time and give you just the straight scoop on how you can use PlexTrac to be more effective in your workflow. And today's going to be a little different from our previous two episodes where we really focused on a lot of the new features that we've been packing in. And we are going to talk about one amazing new feature towards the end of the webinar, and that's our trends analytics. But really today we want to focus on the use of tags in the platform. I'm an evangelist for tags. Tags have only been in PlexTrac since about last fall, actually. And everything I'm going to show you today, actually, it didn't spring from my cranium, but these are all things that through the course of about the last 8 months, as we have been working with our clients, we've seen some really interesting and great ways of using tags. So we'll give a brief overview of just the mechanics behind the tags, and then we'll talk about three very discrete use cases. The first one for discriminating on scope, which is basically is how you can use tags to very easily sort the various findings in your document as you export them to your document-based delivery. The second one is really powerful, and that is for post-processing of data. PlexTrac has a lot of great and amazing capabilities built in, but sometimes you want to take your data to that next level and do some, at least some first-order analytics. And the tags really enable our ability to do that in conjunction with the custom exports and the use of Ginger code. And then we want to discuss how tags can really turn what can be your living risk register at the organizational level into more of a personalized risk register for each of your workers and what they're responsible for. But then we will finish off by getting into our trend analytics. All right, so with no further ado, we've got a new graphic for today to kick off the demo. So hopefully the demo gods are satisfied with their offerings. All right, so what are tags? Well, tags are really nothing more than user-defined metadata that enables two major types of enhanced functionality. It allows us to sort things as we're exporting to documents and keep things organized, and it provides the building block for the analytics in those customized risk registers. Now, where can you actually tag in PlexTrac? Well, the answer is pretty much anywhere on any sort of data structure. So here we have an actual client, Cottonwood Enterprises, and note we've tagged this client with things like it's industry vertical, it's a manufacturing client. perhaps with the importance of this particular client to my organization if I'm a consultancy. But this provides you, once again, with those building blocks that you can use in analytics at the client level. However, you can also tag at the report level. So once you're inside the context of a client, you can add those additional tags, perhaps by the type of engagement that you're performing. This is a web app scanner, a report that brings in the results from web app scanner. Maybe the actual name of the application that you're doing recurring engagements again would log me in. Or maybe actually the owner of the property that is being tested here, in this case, DevOps. We can also tag inside the context of a finding, and this is where we're going to spend most of our time today. And this is the preview of a finding, so I'm not actually doing the editing here, but you can see that even in our preview modal, if you haven't noticed in a while, a few months ago we added the display of the tags to the preview modal. And one thing you'll notice is that some of these tags are the same. You can use the same tags at various levels inside of the platform. And finally, we can even tag now down at the asset level. We can tag the asset with the data owner. We can tag it with its physical location, infrastructure. A lot of the same types of metadata that exist in the fields, when they're brought into the tag structure, really give us the ability to slice and dice our data in a much more granular fashion. One interesting use case that I've seen people is they're tagging certain assets as crown jewels. This is the things that I need to ensure that I'm keeping my eye on at least every other day. Now, how do we actually create the tags themselves? Well, tags can be created in one of two ways. They can be created on the fly in any of the various fields that I've already shown you. So here we are inside the concept of a client, and I really can create anything I want for a tag. And if the tag doesn't already exist in the database, you'll note that you get the option to create the tag. And once you do that, it's available for everybody to use everywhere. Some things to keep in mind when you're creating tags. You may note that I used a single string here and I used all lowercase, and I limited my special characters to the underscore there. You want to follow those basic simple rules. The tags weren't really designed to be something that you're going to display the text of in your final document delivery. They're machine readable, but they are tied to things and can be mapped to things that are much more user friendly. The other way that we can add tags into the system, and it's actually a preferred way in my mind, is to go to the global administration section, the account admin section, and in our tags setting, we actually have a place where we can manage all of our tags. And this is a great place where if you've accidentally created a tag that isn't in line with what your standards are, you can come in, find it, replace it. Or oftentimes when I'm developing a custom Word template with a client, once we're done with that process, there'll be a list of 5 to 15 tags that they're going to use consistently. And this allows them to come in and create all those in one-stop shopping. Some best practices on tag conventions. I already talked about how tags should be a single string, lowercase, but what I really do encourage people to do with their tags is make them absolutely verbose with lots of words. And the reason why I say that you should do this is, number one, tags are free. We don't charge you by the character. But in reality, what's nice is that now that I've created this particular tag, it's gone into the database. And if I'm in the context of, say, a finding or a report, and I want to begin adding those tags, I can just start typing that away, and it'll automatically fill that in. So let me give you an example of that. I'll hop into any particular finding here. I've got, so hopping into one of these findings, I begin to edit this finding, and we'll just grab a simple string out of what I just typed, which was verbose. And you can see that with just a few simple characters, the entirety of the tag is available. And so because tags can be verbose, it allows you to make them very descriptive of what the intent is for the tag's use. And it also prevents people from accidentally choosing the wrong tags. Some of the functionality that we're going to show, in fact, most of the functionality that we're going to show around tags does require that the tags be entered correctly. And so by making them verbose, you ensure that your team is not incorrectly entering the wrong tag and selecting that. All right, so enough on the mechanics of the tags. Let's actually get into the process of how we actually use these. And the first use case I want to talk to you about is actually scope discrimination. So we'll start with White Cloud Financial here. So in White Cloud Financial, I have a single report and with only 3 findings. However, each of these findings is notionally in a different scope of the engagement. So for example, this particular engagement might have a portion that has an internal pen test scope. As you can see with this particular finding, it might have a external pen test scope, as you see with this particular finding, and we've tagged it appropriately. And it might actually also have a web application pen test. And so by tagging each one of those findings with the scope and adding just a very, very small amount of Jinja logic, I am able to very rapidly, and let me bring that, that template up and show you what we've got going on here. I'm able to very rapidly discriminate where in the report that I want that particular file to be demonstrated, or to be displayed. So I've got that up now, so let me go ahead and show you. This is our standard default template that I've just done honestly about 15 minutes of tweaking to the Jinja code. And why I did that was so that we can demonstrate how we can use those tags to sort. So you can see I've just updated the table of contents here, and you can see that the data in this report has been exported into the proper sections of the report just based upon those tags. So I'll skim past all the standard analytics stuff and get down to the detailed findings, and just to show you that you can see that here is the server-side template injection, which we had tagged in the external section. If we move down to the next section, internal penetration test was sorted appropriately, as was, there's your Windows 7, depth to Windows 7 image. And then finally, your web application pen test. And really, that's very, very simple logic. I would say that probably 2/3 of the report templates that I help our clients with are the type where they have multiple scopes in the engagement. So very helpful for that sort of use case. But now let's dive into something quite a bit more interesting and a little bit more complex. So let me hop into the Cottonwood, where are we at? Cottonwood Enterprises here. So Cottonwood Enterprises has recently received a CMMC level 3 certification pre-assessment. And so if we hop into their data set here and grab any one of these findings, you can see that there's quite a few tags here. Once again, tags are free. Use as many of them as you like. And each of these individual controls has been tagged with the domain that the control falls in. It's also been tagged with the maturity level. The CMMC framework is a tiered 5 maturity framework. And so each of those controls is mapped to a specific level. We also went ahead and tagged each of these controls with the actual control number. And then there's a subcategorization called the practice. When we're actually going to use a couple of these in conjunction to really do some pretty interesting post-processing after we export the data. So for this particular one, I'm not going to walk you through the process of doing the actual export because there's 176 findings in here. And quite frankly, it takes about 2 minutes to do the rendering of all that. But I do want to show you what we can do on the with those tags after we export. So what you're seeing here, the data that's in front of you has all been generated dynamically, automatically when we export out of PlexTrac by using those tags with the custom Jinja code. So what we've done for this first table is we've actually done the math and figured out by the level of maturity for each control, by the control for each level of maturity, what's your percentage of compliance? So most folks that are going to be seeking DoD contracts in the near future are going to be required to hit a level 3. So by doing some of this post-processing math in conjunction with the tags, we kind of give them a delta. Hey, you've still got quite a bit of work to do. And then we can also give them a little bit of a roadmap for the future. If you want to improve your opportunities and bid on some higher level contracts, you've got this additional delta. Additional post-processing we did, and I actually only spent probably about 4 hours doing all of the coding to make this all work, is we broke this out by combining the presence of the domain tags, so for example, access control, with the status, for compliancy, we're really able to very granularly break out in each domain where they compliant, where they partially compliant, where they non-compliant. And then, it's just another example of what we can do. We can further break things out using those tags and just give the client, hey, in each domain, these are the specific controls that you need to work on because you're not compliant or you're only partially compliant for these controls. And once again, broken out by domain. And then finally, we can, if I scroll on down, we can use the same logic. I went too far down there, but to once again break out our detailed findings, once again by the domain tags that we have. But once again, the real power in what I've just demonstrated for you here is all the post-processing that we can do, and it's not that complicated. If we were to show you the actual the code that's behind that first table, where we tabulated the compliance percentage by the maturity level, really all we were doing is declaring some variables and some simple if statements to look for the presence of those tags. And then just a quick little bit of math, and there we are. So, maybe some of the stuff we've already done so many times that we'd be happy to share with you and work with you on that code yourself. So that's post-processing. And really, the sky is kind of the limit. If you can think of something that you can do by sorting and tabulating your findings, your controls, what have you, we really can create those custom templates to automatically do a lot of that math that you may have done before with a calculator or just with a spreadsheet. But next, I want to talk about what I think is one of the more interesting uses of tags inside of the platform itself, not waiting for that document delivery. When your clients come in, they've got those analyst access and they're looking at their data, or maybe it's you inside of your organization and your stakeholders. And that is using tags as a living risk register. So let's talk real quick about what we talk about with a risk register. Well, generally, it's a management tool. It's an aggregation of all the things that are out there, and oftentimes it's abstracted. And while that may be very useful for the CISOs, for the C-levels, for the board, it may not be that helpful for the worker bees or the actual process owners or the actual device owners that are responsible for remediation. And for those folks, the concept of a living risk register that is constantly updated can really be that handy thing. They come in Monday morning and they know exactly what they need to do. So let's take this a little bit deeper, and let's hop into Tags-A-Lot analytics. Tags-A-Lot analytics could be representative of a standard organization. You've got multiple geographic locations, and you've got multiple ways that you identify risk. Okay, so maybe the Bend, Oregon satellite office has a monthly Nexpose test. And so as we showed you in our last episode, when you're bringing in that scan results, you can bulk tag all those findings as they're brought into the platform so you don't have to manually do it. So when I brought in this Nexpose scan sample, I included the tags for the Bend satellite, for the geographic location. But I also included the tag for vulnerability management here because the process owner for vulnerability management may be responsible for not just the Bend satellite office, but other places as well. So that's one example of the types of use case in the report. But we've also got maybe a monthly Nessa scan at the Boise headquarters. It's a different geographic location, so we've tagged it differently for the geographic stakeholders. But once again, those process stakeholders can have this data tied together and easily accessible by using that same process tag of vulnerability management as well. You might even have something like a physical security assessment. Generally these things don't have 500 findings, but in this case, they identified risks through a physical security assessment. So we've got that tag here as well as once again, that geographic owner. And then, the final example that I'd like to show you is just on our Roblox application here, web application. Once again, maybe a little bit different here. Maybe it doesn't necessarily have a geographic stakeholder, but it does have an owner, and that's DevOps. So how do we use all this stuff, and how do we make this actually meaningful to our stakeholders? Well, that's down in our analytics section. So I'm going to hop into our analytics and findings, and I'm going to just filter down in on that particular set of findings, which I believe we were in Tags-A-Lot analytics. There we are. So there's 178 findings across the board. And if you're the CISO, you probably care about all of these. So this gives you your one-stop shop. It shows you everything that's closed in process or open. I haven't done a whole lot of closing on the sample data, but we'll see a little bit more on how we can look at those metrics later. But even at that high level, now you have an aggregated spot where you've got all of the data, once again, from all of those ways that you identify risk aggregated. However, what if I am really just a stakeholder that's responsible for security in the Boise office, the Boise headquarters? So I can, oh, I don't want the reports there. I want to filter on the actual finding tags. Go up a little bit long here. And so if I were to filter by my geographic tag, and you can have tags for whatever you like, once again, I can see now that of that 178 findings, really only 145 are things that I necessarily need to be concerned about in my little chunk of the world. And once again, that living risk register is now broken down and narrowed to just the things that, once again, are in my scope or things that I care about. Same thing could be said if I wasn't the Boise headquarters, but if I was in the Bend, Oregon office, Bend satellite office. Now I've got the ability to, once again, get my customized living risk register. However, what if I'm the vuln management guy? Well, because we have the vuln management process tag across all those geographic locations, I can now aggregate that data. And really, at this point, I'm getting everything other than the physical security findings and maybe those DevOps findings. And so I've got my own customized living risk register. So tags are extremely powerful, both for how easy they make it for you to export the data into the places you want it to go exactly into your document, to do that post-processing, the post-export processing and analytics, so you get that data exactly formatted the way you want and tell the story that you want in the way you want to without a lot of hand jamming. And then finally, once again, so that people can find the risks that really matter to them. And because every time a finding or a control is brought into closed status in PlexTrac, it's not displayed in the analytics, this truly does become the living risk register. If we were to go in and close out default or guessable SNMP community names, this disappears. This is no longer on my punch list of things to do. So I hope you will become as big of an evangelist for tags as I have. It's hard for me to remember what PlexTrac was like without them. I do not do a single project these days, whether that's a custom template, whether that is an assessment or questionnaire, or whether it's just helping a customer onboard their workflow and their use of the client portal, where we aren't heavily involved in tags. And if you want to a deeper dive on how you might use tags to tell the story in a more friendly fashion and easier fashion with less manual work, please hit me up, support@plextrac.com, and let's get you moving in the right direction. So tags are great, but tags have been around for quite a bit of time, I guess, in the grand scheme of things now. But what's new this month is something that we're really proud of and we've been working on for quite some time. So, we just showed the risk register, and that's very granular information. That is the level of detail that the guys who get the job done need to get the job done. However, if you're a C-level or you're on the board level, that may be a little too deep of a dive for you. You don't necessarily need to see the individual information. What your concerns are about is the overall program health. Are we resourcing your program well enough? Are you executing? Are we accumulating security debt? Are we getting better or are we getting worse? So for quite some time in PlexTrac, we've had this concept of the winning and losing chart, which was basically the trend of your issues opened and closed over time. But we've really taken this to the next level. First and foremost, we've really skinned the graphics and made them much more CISO and board level friendly. And what's the story we're telling here? So in this hypothetical client, Barnyard Brothers here, imagine a world where back in December, they contracted with a third party. They really hadn't been taking security seriously, and they got a good assessment or pen test. And they logged 20 new open findings. Great, okay, so that's a good starting point. It looks bad, and it looks like we're accumulating security debt. But over time, right, they begin to ramp up the remediation efforts. And by January, they're starting to turn the tide. By February, Barnyard is now closing more of these findings than they're opening. They're actually making progress. And this is an easy story. It's a great visual for those sea levels. You know, if you're at this point, you're winning. Sure, you might have a lot of outstanding debt, but you're making strides and you're chipping away at it. You know, March, you got a blip here where you identify more findings than you remediate, but that could also be a good news story. This opens the conversation. Hey, boss, in March, we did a formal self-assessment, you know, using the CIS-20 framework, and we identified some new gaps and things that weren't caught in the December test, and we logged those things. But then over time, we once again move into a state where we are winning, where we are reducing the overall security debt. And this is the story that you want to tell. And if you can't tell this story, that's when it starts the conversation about what are we doing wrong? Are we not resourcing things properly? So really powerful graphic, very, very happy with the dev team and how they pulled this off. There's a lot of complicated stuff going on under the hood here. All these findings are grouped in 30-day buckets, by the way, if you're wondering how the data points work and whatnot. So that's awesome, but does it really tell the whole story? So let's put ourselves in this position here in May of 20. Are we winning? Well, it looks like we're winning. We're definitely reducing. We're reducing the total number of outstanding findings, the open findings that are out there. However, there's more to the topic here. What types of findings are we actually closing out? And that's really where this next brand new to PlexTrac, and I'm so excited to show you all, chart comes in, which is the average time from creation to closed, right? Because once again, some findings are more important than others. And as an information security leader, what I want to keep my eyes on is those critical findings that are out there, the ones that really keep me up at night. Are we starting to do better on getting those things closed out faster, right? So, you know, this is the same data set, and here we are back in January. We're really not closing out anything. That's why everything starts out from a low point here. We've got a couple, you know, criticals and a couple highs. And you can see as we ramp up our remediation efforts, it might actually seem like it's a losing story. The amount of time to close is increasing, but that's because we're actually closing findings. Those findings that we opened back in December are finally getting knocked out. But this is where you can see the winning happening, right? Over time now, though, as we move on, the time from open to close is going down. We're now getting to the point where by the end of May here, we're down to probably about 18 days. These numbers on the right, by the way, are your average over time. If you're looking for the average that you have for any particular data period, that's when you want to hover your cursor over that period and look at the pop-up that you see on your screen right now. So, you know, sure, our informational time to close is going way up because maybe we're finally getting around to being able to address some of those informational findings because we're actually making the strides in the things that matter most to us, the criticals, the highs, even the mediums. So, you know, this is a very powerful chart as well because I think this is a good news story. But if you can back this good news story up with a good news story like this that shows that you're reducing your time to close, especially those critical and high impact items, you're really giving the management and the stakeholders the tools they need to get that very high level 30,000 foot assessment of the overall health of their information security program. We're not done yet. We have a lot of great additional graphics and widgets coming to this section. One of which I'm really excited about. It's like, okay, I can see here that I am remediating my criticals now in 15 days. Is that good or is that bad? What are my organizational standards? So we're going to be introducing in the not too distant future the concept of benchmarks, where you'll have some additional widgets where I've established my benchmarks. If you're a critical finding and there is a asset that is rated of a certain criticality or maybe not. It's up to you if you want to add that additional discriminator. I can set benchmarks and start tracking at the individual finding level. How much time do I have left to get this thing done and completed before the clock runs out and before I'm not meeting my own internal standards of performance? So really, really excited about what we've done already. Really excited about where we're going with this. And and I got to tell you, all the things that I've shown you, both in the tags and in the analytics, is really a direct result of the feedback that I get when I talk to you, when we have our conversations, our check-ins, even when you call me with problems. So please keep the feedback coming. It's how we make PlexTrac better for each and every one of you. So at this point, I will go ahead and turn it over for Brian, and we'll begin our question and answer period.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate the demonstration. Nice job. Go ahead and turn it over to the group real quickly and see if there are any questions that we can answer. Please feel free to utilize the chat function within the Zoom presentation. If there are any questions from the group, we'll give just a couple of minutes to get those out there.
Brian, I had one question here, and it was if I'm in the finding section where we were looking at things before with our tags and our analytics, do I have the ability of looking at more than one client at one time? And absolutely, the answer is yes. The field here for the clients is an aggregator. It's an OR. So if you're a stakeholder and you have a whole, you have a number of different business units that you have purview of, you absolutely can aggregate that data and start bringing multiple organizational units into one living risk register. So it really is tailorable at that function. Looks like we have another question I saw just pop up, and it may have popped up in the chat here. Let me take.
Yeah, Sean, the question was, can I filter by severity on the trends?
Sure. So in the trends today, we do not have a filter by severity. And that's really where we started to go with how we're doing down here to kind of get that view of how you're doing in the remediation. But I love the idea. I love the, actually, hold on a second. My bad.
Yeah, Sean, I was just going to say, there you go.
Sorry, sometimes my mouth works faster than my brain. And quite frankly, hey, that's why we do these things. This is new functionality even to the PlexTrac team, right? So we do have that ability to filter based upon severity. Thanks, Dan. Brian. All right. Yeah, absolutely. Can we receive a copy of the Word template that uses tags to have internal, external, and web assessment all in one report? Yeah, absolutely. Sure. And I know who you are there. I won't out you, but I'll go ahead and send that over right now. It's pretty simple logic. But yeah, get that out to your team there.
Perfect. And Sean, looks like we've got one last question. Can you talk about how clients can access this information and we ensure that the information represented in the analytics is just accessible to that client?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So, you know, I'm currently logged in, obviously, as you can see, as the global administrator. So I have access to all the clients that are here. However, when you provision your clients or your users in an enterprise environment in a PlexTrac, you're obviously not going to necessarily give them that same level of permission. So just a quick review of how the user provisionment works in PlexTrac. When I add a user here and I give them to any of the roles really, but the analyst role is really what you'd be providing them with. As long as you're not clicking this default group, when you create this user, they by default do not have access to anything. And that's a good thing, we believe. You know, once again, we are a security company. And so after you have created a user, as long as they're not a member of the default group, what you will need to do to ensure that they have access to the things you want them to have access and nothing else is just hop into authorization. You would find the individual client that you wish them to have access to, and then you would authorize that user for access. Then when they log in and they go to their clients page, should have had an analyst log in up and ready for the demo. But instead of seeing all the clients, they only see the client that they've been given. And you can authorize them access to as many clients as you like. It doesn't just have to be one. But then also, when you go into the analytics and you start trying to use these tags and filters on the right-hand side, if you don't have access to tags a lot analytics, this is not an option for you. Same thing, you know, with any of these things. And if you input a tag that applies to data that you don't have authorization to view, that's in a, in a report, in a client you don't have authorization for, it's not going to return or fetch that data. You're not going to see it. It's just going to be as if it never existed. So yes, we absolutely ensure that even in the analytics section, that the data that's coming back is only what was intended for that viewer to see.
Excellent. Thanks, Sean. That's great, and I appreciate everybody who submitted a question there. If we had any other questions come in that we didn't get a chance to address during the webinar, we'll certainly follow up with those afterwards. So to wrap up today's webinar, I want to highlight some of the things that our development team has been really busy working on over the course of the last month since our last presentation, and highlight some of the functionality that we're excited to be introducing to you in one of our upcoming future webinars here. The first thing that I want to talk about today is the overhaul to our role-based access controls. We've gotten a ton of great feedback from clients on their desire to better define how a user can interact with the platform today. So this overhaul to the role-based access controls is going to give you the ability to specifically define what users can and cannot perform within the platform. So you're no longer going to be limited to just the rights and permissions in the context of a standard user or an analyst as we have it today. You'll be able to much more granularly define exactly what you want your users and clients and constituents to be able to perform within the PlexTrac platform. I'm very excited about this, so stay tuned. We'll have much more on this functionality in a near future webinar and some additional announcements coming on that functionality very soon. The second enhancement that I want to highlight today is our ongoing migration to a full HTML for text storage. So this is going to be a move away from the markdown that we utilize today. With the HTML, we'll be able to offer a far more robust text editing experience throughout the PlexTrac platform, and are very eager to get this into PlexTrac in the very near future and have more coming on this, hopefully at our next webinar. And then the last thing that I want to highlight today is that we've begun the development on our first add-on product, which is Runbooks. Runbooks is going to give our clients the ability to define and build out their own custom methodologies for engagements and assessments, and then track their work against those custom methodologies. This is going to bring a level of customization, but also a level of consistency and replicability across all of the operators and your assessors that are running through engagements and assessments in the platform. We've got a lot more to announce about this and look forward to having more to show and highlight over the course of the next month or two, and look forward to continuing to get feedback and thoughts from the clients in terms of how they want to see this functionality rolled out and developed. So with that, this will bring our third installment of PlexTrac Like a Pro to a close. I want to thank everybody for attending and your continued support of PlexTrac. We really do have the greatest clients in the world. Thank you so much for attending today. Have a really safe and fun holiday weekend coming up. We look forward to seeing you guys on our next webinar. Thanks, everybody.